The Seventh Tower by Garth Nix. Book 2, Castle, Chapter 26. Instinctively, Tal looked for his shadow guard to ask it where the chosen enclave was. Once he knew that, he would be able to work out where they should go. But as Tal turned, his shadow moved with him, just like a natural shadow. Too much like a natural shadow, in fact. The shadow guard had never been that good at mimicking an ordinary shadow. Tal bent down to touch it, and felt grass, rather than the cool touch of shadow flesh. "It's gone," he said numbly. "I've got my natural shadow back." "Good," said Mila. She was looking around, nose wrinkling. Something had disturbed her, though she couldn't quite work out what it was. "You don't understand," said Tal, shaking his head in disbelief and sorrow. "It's been with me all my life. I knew it would go when it was time for me to get a spirit shadow, but I thought it would wait till I was ready to let it go. It could have at least said goodbye." Something hissed from behind one of the trees. The warning hiss of the shadow guard. Then a small, furry, but somehow recognizable animal sprang out, jumped up on Tal's chest, licked him across the face, and then jumped away again. Mila had her knife in her hand, ready to throw, but she hesitated. Before she could change her mind, whatever it was disappeared at high speed through the trees. "Was that it?" she asked hesitantly. "No longer shadow." "They're not shadows in Einir. Not until we bind them and take them back," replied Tal, wiping his face and his eyes with his sleeve. I guess I'd always liked being a Datu because it was one here." He shook his head a few times, as if to clear it, then looked down at his natural shadow again. He felt very alone without his shadow guard. It had saved him countless times, from danger and embarrassment and difficulty. Now all he had was a useless shadow. An almost useless shadow, he corrected himself, because he would use it as a part of a trap to catch some creature of Einir and turn it into a spirit shadow to take back to the castle. Mila was still poised in the clearing between the trees, a troubled look on her face. "Something is happening," she said. "Listen." Tal stood still and listened. At first all he could hear was the wind in the branches above him. Then he heard it too, distant thunder, which was slowly growing closer. "Thunder," he said. "That means lightning, too." "Lightning?" Mila asked. "What is that?" Hard to explain," said Tal. He'd only seen it in Einir, for lightning did not pass through the veil in the dark world. But it did strike the towers, and he had often heard the thunder that accompanied lightning, even inside the castle. The lectors had also given several lessons about lightning, and how it could be mimicked with light magic. The Icecarls would hear thunder too, but they wouldn't know of its connection with lightning, because they would never see it. "Lightning is kind of concentrated light that comes down from the sky. You can work out how far away the lightning is by counting the time between the flash and the sound of the thunder." "I can't see any flash," said Mila. "There are too many trees." She stopped in mid-sentence because off in the distance a tree was slowly moving. Not just swaying from side to side, but actually walking. Tal and Mila jumped at the same time as a ripple spread through the grass under their feet. The closest tree shivered and somehow stretched a little taller. One of its exposed roots flexed and then pulled out of the ground with a popping sound. "The trees, they walk?" asked Mila. She seemed more pleased at the notion than afraid. "Not usually," replied Tal suspiciously, stepping back. "Though in Einir, who knows?" All the trees around them were uprooting themselves. They swayed and rolled, but somehow didn't fall. Tal and Mila backed away from the closest one, even though it made no threatening movements. When enough of its root system was clear, all the roots wriggled like thousands of tiny legs, and the tree started slowly moving away from them. All the trees were walking. They were heading off in every direction except toward the storm. walking away from the sound of thunder, which was getting closer with every passing moment. "The trees are fleeing," said Mila. "From the thunder?" "Maybe," said Tal. The forest had cleared out behind them as trees shook and swayed, shedding leaves and branches in their haste to depart. "Sometimes things happen in Einar for no reason." Mila snorted, a sound that Tal knew meant she didn't think much of his local knowledge. He continued to look out at the sky, trying to remember everything he'd been taught about storms in Einar. Dim memories of the lectorium came into his head, mostly of Lector Norval droning on. All he could remember was a story about storm shepherds, strange creatures that looked like human-shaped clouds, 10 or 12 stretches tall, which were thought to be harmless if left alone. This didn't seem very useful. Neither did Tal's memories of previous visits to Einar with his family. They had always stayed close to the chosen enclave, though his father had traveled farther afield. The trees continued to move away, and before long Tal and Mila could see a continuous line of dark clouds on the horizon. Flashes of lightning also became visible, forking down from the black sky. Tal looked at Mila and saw her staring at the lightning, totally entranced. Then she shook her head and said, "It is not dishonorable to seek shelter from a storm. We should follow the trees." "I'm not sure," replied Tal nervously. He looked at the rapidly retreating forest heading toward what he thought was probably south, then at the long line of barren rocky hills to the east and west, and then at the clouds again. "Maybe we should go that way." He pointed at the closer hills. "Why?" asked Mila. Tal gulped and said, "Because I think that storm is going to turn this whole place into a lake." "A what?" asked Mila. "Look at the darkness under the clouds," Tal said urgently. "Look around. We're in a basin, and the clouds are dumping rain. This whole area is going to fill up. It's going to flood, turn into a lake. A small sea." Mila needed no further explanation. She took one calculating look at the encroaching clouds and then started to run to the closest hill. Tal was right behind her.